Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, The Love and Dating Guru with Dr. Dan, an industry expert. I'm very excited about this show as it will bring new insight to our many listeners about the dating challenges in the 21st century and the do's and don'ts when seeking your soulmate. Everything you need or want to learn about the how-tos of dating and relationship will be discussed here. How to avoid being put into friend zone after the first date, being catfished, conned, or getting scammed, and so much more will be covered in this podcast. Toxic relationship can cause strife, breakup, or divorces. Infidelity, trust issues, troubled finances can contribute to these challenges. Guests appearing on our show are expert in this industry, sharing their insight about what you can encounter in any stage of dating, getting into relationship, and whatever else come next. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in relationship, marriage counseling using the EFT method, and post-divorce strategies when transitioning back into a single life. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our official website is metalifecoach.online. Today, I'm very excited to have our third episode of season 7, a very special guest and toxic relationship expert, Mr. Richard Procida. And just like all of my previous episodes, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Richard, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you very much, Dan. My name's, like I said, Richard Procida. I grew up and suffered extensive sexual abuse. So a lot of my past, I began sexual abuse. And then as a young man, of course, there's sexual exploitation and harassment. And then as an adult, it's now I feel it's turned into financial abuse. So I went to college and I knew I had a huge problem with women. So I took a class on the study of women and men in society. And I had a mystical conversion experience in that class. And I decided to minor in the study. I became a member of the Students Alliance for a Non-Sexist Society. I started an organization called People Against Pornography. I spoke at colleges and universities about sexuality and pornography. And I decided to minor in the study of women and men in society. And then I went to law school and I ended up writing a book, which is about it's a survey of laws and social attitudes towards sexually explicit materials in different countries around the world. And it's a textbook. And so I did that. And then I came back to California, and still, I've never really dated. As a young man, I was too traumatized to go out on dates and to try, and I didn't understand women at all. I minored in the study of women and men in society. I wrote a book that was considered a feminist studies book at one point, and I knew very little about women until more recently I started to discover what has been called the red pill. Now, the red pill has a lot of connotations. People think it's one thing or think it's another, but really what it is, it's evolutionary psychology and behavioralism. And we're looking at dating and sexual behavior, particularly the sexual and behaviors of women. And so that's what that is. And it just opened my eyes. I had already, by that time, got rid of a 23-year-old relationship that was no good for me. And it was the best decision in my life. I'm dating successfully for the first time in my life. And so I started the Nonpartisan Red Pill Men's Group, which is nonpartisan, don't forget that word. And we're doing a book study now of a book by Rollo Tomassi called The Rational Male. And then I produced that. I make copies of those meetings and I put them as a podcast. And I also do some writing and so forth. But that's where I'm at now, that I've come a long way in my journey. And now I'm working to to make change and to deal with my trauma, process my trauma, and to understand women. And it's not always a bright and cheery, that's not always sweet and light.
Yeah. Oh, you tell me about it. Well, thank you very much for being on the show, Richard, and be able to share with all of our listeners your traumatic experience when it comes to sexual abuse. Now, if we go back to what you just mentioned earlier about the metaphor of the red pill, now a lot of people who listen to this automatically they're going to associate the red pill with the Matrix trilogy. Does it have to do something with being awakened by taking the red pill versus the blue pill when it comes to sexual traumatic abuse?
Yes, absolutely. Now, a lot of men would deny this. I think the red pill is sort of a Me Too movement for men who have been messed up by women because they didn't understand them. And we've all been taught wrong about how women and men are. And so the red pill initially, at least initially started out as an examination of female behavior and to help men understand women. And then somehow it got transitioned into this broader category and everybody thinks it's conservative. But I just read a study recently, the incels that everybody at one point wanted to blame for the mass shootings, the incels are not conservative. They're not necessarily conservative. They're involuntarily celibate, but they're not conservative right-wing fundamentalists. That a lot of them are liberals.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of what I would call anti-male propaganda out there. And so, and that's dividing the sexes. We're not just divided in this country by race or religion. We're divided by gender, and it's intentional. They're looking to sell us sex. Right now, we have a massive sex industry. Sex is everywhere. Women on cam girls making billions of dollars, but men are sexless and alone. 60% of men, young men, are single. One in three men is sexless. Women, not so much. But they're saying that by 2030, 45% of women will be childless and alone. How do we have the society with sex, so much sexlessness and loneliness, and yet we have this massive sex industry out raking in dough on desperate, lonely people, and keeping us divided feeds that industry, feeds that profit. It also feeds a lot of political energy.
Mhm.
So it's very important for people to take a step back. Everything we've learned about our genders is wrong, and start to treat the opposite sex or the other gender, whatever gender you are, as a human being, as
Yes.
an equal, because our relationships are not based on equality.
So let me ask you a challenging question here, Richard. Actually, it's going to be a divided question. Okay,
Mhm.
when I say divided, not among the sexes, but you'll understand what I mean. So why do we see now more teachers who are young and beautiful who teaches high school or elementary, and we see so many of them now praying over young kids who are 13 and having intimate relations with them versus in our time, the Generation X never really experienced that. We never seen stories like that, but now we see always women raping young kids. Why that change? Why this kind of mentality that we see more among women who are teachers and praying over the young kid? Why? What is it happening now?
Well, I had experienced that. So with a teacher, with a counselor, actually. And also in college, I experienced some sexual harassment. I think it's really been going on for a long time. It was like the Me Too movement, but way before that, in the 60s, people started to realize that there's a rampant sexual harassment. A law came out in the 70s, about the time I filed a charge of sexual harassment at my college, and it was new. The sexual harassment laws are new, but the thing with the women, there's a lot more going. The teachers are just the tip of the iceberg. The teachers are the persons in authorities. They're not connected to the child. They don't know the child. They're not family members. They can't hide it. When it comes out, they get busted. This has been going on. There's a called hypergamy, and it doesn't really work. But there's also a darkness, a dark nature that women have. And they're looking to get that, always looking for that more better genetic material, let's put it that way. And and women, well, I think there's a lot of abuse going on right now, particularly women towards men, because the men have changed. But I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think they're getting caught now because before, men's right to say no is really not respected. That's what I've learned from this experience. It's the sexiest word a man can say, no, but women don't listen. They think that in their mind, sometimes they think that all men will just, if you turn them on, oh my God, they're going to be on automatic and they're just going to, they can't control themselves. It's not true at all.
But then,
So go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt you, Richard. But then again, because in the past there was no law behind it, so the women were able to pray more over the men. But do you think that now that there's a law, why do we still see women praying over men, knowing that they could get busted? Isn't that going to be a way to avoid, or not avoid, but reduce the amount of harassment? I don't get it. Why now they see so many other colleagues being busted because of doing what they did? Why do still women do that?
Well, I want to tell you that women, and when it comes to sex, have a mentality that they're free to do anything. There's no, we don't restrain women in this regard. There's double standards. A woman can expose herself anywhere. A man, no, he's going to jail. He's getting it reported to his family. He's going to be blocked from going near schools. This is the type of situation that we're in. And I think just like any law, you create a law, all of a sudden, all the stuff that's been going down for years and years and years is going to come to light. And I think that's what's really happening. We now have recognized that young teenage boys and little boys are not sex machines that don't get hurt by
Yes,
this behavior.
I see.
So now, but women have not really in total learned that. They still we still have this, even me, when I talk about my sex, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? But it's the same thing with women. So women have been accused of not yelling or screaming during a rape.
Yeah.
That was a law. If you didn't, in Israel, ancient Israel, if you didn't yell and scream, it was not rape.
Consensual. Yes, exactly. But then again, if I go back to what you just said earlier, Richard, like a few minutes back, you said that 1 out of 3 men are lonely or single, and this is why the porn industry is so rapidly growing. But do you think that if more people were in a relationship, would that reduce the amount of people watching porn? Because if they're with someone that they love, they would rather be intimate with that person versus watching porn. Because how is that directly correlated to the percentage of single in our country?
I think you're right that a men are using porn because, well, obviously there's a variety of reasons, and sometimes women and men use pornography together,
Okay.
but the main reason is that they have no one.
Okay.
This is their resort. I'm confident that if a man had a woman in front of him, he wouldn't be turning to porn. And so it's not the other way around. It's not men using porn and therefore they're not. Now, we have a bunch of industries where men get caught up in these relationships, but that's not it. I think that men are lonely and sexless. And one of the reasons is that the relationships that we have are based on a period where women and men were not equal, where women didn't have any money or anything like that. So the dating relationships aren't really working in this post-feminist world. A lot of women want traditional relationships in a post-modern world, which means they want the man to pay for everything. And men don't, it's equal. It's not the thing where men have all the money and women have none anymore.
Mhm.
So men have changed over time. We've stopped catcalling. We allow women to supervise us. We allow women to judge us. we have changed. Women are still in the 1950s as far as their expectations of men. And those two, their sexuality is designed to find a man that they look up to. They want higher status, higher power, more disposable income, at least more money. That's that's the game that they're playing. And it's not conducive with a relationship, with a society based on equality between the genders. I don't know if I got way off subject on what your
No, I
question
mean,
was.
no, definitely. I mean, obviously, you answered a few more questions that I was going to ask you. You basically anticipated the next few questions. So, if it's an industry of equality where women and men supposed to be able to contribute equally, but then if you have the woman that makes a lot more money because she's more career oriented, and the father wants to be able to be is more nurturing and more with the kids, isn't that in a way an equal relationship as well, due to the fact that one will balance out the other, not necessarily financially, but more in other area of their life to be able to make this as a perfect relationship?
I think it is. However, I think it's also a turnoff. It can be a turnoff. Women want masculine men. They don't want feminine men. And so these, and there's this, I was just reading a few days ago some anti-male propaganda. Here's an example of anti-male propaganda. There's this thing with a picture of Hillary Clinton, Taylor Swift, and other women saying men are intimidated by successful women. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're not intimidated by successful women. Successful, rich women do not want nor respect men who are less successful than them or have less than them. That's what's going on.
Okay.
So in that situation where the woman is the head of the household, and I think that's great. I want that situation. But the problem is, how will the sexual portion, how will the romantic portion of the relationship play out when the woman is in that role and the man's in that role? Will she have the respect for him? Will she be what they call boss babe? Who's going to order him around? And eventually, if they don't have respect for their man, then they lose attraction and they start to dislike him. So it's very complicated female psychology that once they start, they're playing a game with you, they're communicating indirectly. Let's put it that way. They communicate indirectly. And so you have to figure all this out. And sometimes, it becomes a process where women lose attraction to their men. The more they learn about marriage, almost kills sexual desire. You have to really work hard to maintain that desire in marriage.
That,
So
so is that a reason why, Richard, we see more women in marriages are the one initiating divorces? There's around 80%. Now let's put aside if the husband had an affair. Let's say the husband was completely faithful, okay? And they were loving, but eventually after the 7-year age or the 15-year age or the 21-year age, whatever you want to call it, why do we see now more women are the one going to the court and filing for divorce? Is it because they lost complete respect? Is it because they lost attraction? Is it because the husband let himself go physically? I mean, what would be the percentage if you have to give a ratio between all of those elements that I just mentioned? What would be the one that will trigger the woman to go and file for divorce?
Oh, wow. Well, I think there's a lot of reasons and a lot of excuses.
Okay.
And I think the main problem is that marriage and long-term relationships are business. If the woman is expecting a lot of things, that's a relationship where it's financial, you're going to be doing things, it's a commitment to each other. But at the same time, when the purposes of that business no longer serve the woman's purposes, for example, children, children grown up, children gone, no need for husband anymore. I want to go get my groove on, have this new chapter of my life, new chapter, new man. So this is the mentality. You know, there isn't a commitment to
Yeah,
the end.
but hold on, Richard. Sorry to interrupt. But as the kids go and leave the house, the woman is less marketable. She's no longer 21 or 22 years old. She's in her 50s or 60s. I'm sorry, but the man, even if you have a man nowadays, and especially in the dating scene, a 65-year-old man will go for a 40-year-old, not a 55. So she's less marketable. So she could not just get up unless if she still looks like Christy Brinkley or Cindy Crawford. Men will not go for that. So why do
But
you think that they have more leeway or more flexibility?
that's a good point. That's a very good point. And I'm glad you brought that up because people haven't brought that up to me. But I do think that this mentality of wanting to move on, and also, okay, there's some level of delusion that women
A lot, not some.
and there's also pride, huge amounts of pride,
Mhm.
you know, that keep them from having the relationships with men they want. And so they're unhappy. They become unhappy. It's hard for them. Obviously, the man is, you know, the sex, whatever, they become dissatisfied with their life and with their man. And that's maybe that's why marriage is not that great for men, because we pay out of our nose and then the women can't stay interested. But there's also things that men do. I mean, men can be really, really stupid too. So it's hard to say in each particular, and women always have a reason to move on. And so, and it's easier for women to get sex. I don't care how old they are. Yeah, they're less marketable. There's still guys hitting on them left and right. And the guy has got, I mean, I'm not saying, and sometimes the guys are out, they said, forget these women anymore. They treat them terribly. I'm having sex with the strippers and
Mhm.
the prostitutes. And the women can do that too. Men, they're no good. They're not want to date me. I'm too old. I'm just going to go have sex with this prostitute. That's devastating for a woman's relationships, I believe. But so, yeah, so I think that there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I'm not sure that women are thinking clearly, but I'm also know that men aren't thinking clearly either. So it's hard to say, but I think a lot of times the women just become dissatisfied with their partner. Oh, you know, there isn't really that commitment
Mhm.
there. Even, you know, a lot of women that, you know, ask me right up front, you know, they don't want to have sex unless you're committed to them. And so I have women that I'm able to have sex with. And so I can tell them that's okay. We don't need to have sex. You
Now, let
know?
me ask you, Richard, yeah, I'm sure that you know what the PTSD, which is the post-traumatic stress disorder, but there's also what we call PTRS, post-traumatic relationship syndrome. And is it possible that if someone has been sexually traumatized at a young age, what would be the percentage of them becoming hypersexual as they get as an adult, or celibate and not wanting to be able to deal with stress because of the traumatic experience that they had when they were younger? Which way does it go primarily? On which side? The hypersexuality or more, no, you know what? Because I've been traumatized, I do not trust women. I do not want to deal with them.
I'm not really sure, but I can tell you my experience is that both, you know, both. I mean, having been exposed to sexuality at an early age led me to have to become sexual at a young age, but also to put myself into situations where where I would end up abused as well. So it's both. And then when I got into college, I was so upset. I mean, still, I'm traumatized. I never got married.
Mhm.
I couldn't really date. I couldn't go to bars. Even now, I don't go to strip clubs that much. I I I don't go to burlesque shows. I don't go to you know, things like that, belly dancing. They all trigger past trauma.
Okay.
So, but at the same time, I have 4 or 5 girlfriends. I've explored sexuality in all certain different ways. Um, and I've so on the one hand, I'm sexually promiscuous and to some degree, but on the other hand, I'm isolated and traumatized. So where guys might go to to a strip club or a party, we're paying dollar bills, and I'm traumatized and I don't want to pay. I've been that way for a long time. I don't think it's fair for me. I'm doing all the work, right? I'm
Yeah.
the guy doing all the work. So why am I paying, right? To give women pleasure? Is that what I'm paying for? I shouldn't have to pay for that.
That's true.
But it's hard to find a beautiful woman who doesn't put money at the top of the list.
That's so true. So now, when it comes to your book, because I want to be able to just talk briefly before we end this podcast. You said it was a survey, if I'm not mistaken. So did you interview like a pool of people to see exactly what was their experience in whatever they've dealt with in the past, or how did you come up with that book?
Well, it was all research. It wasn't really, I was a lawyer, not a social scientist, but I was doing a combination of social science and law. And it was basically research of public opinion polls and laws, legal research and public opinion, and sort of with a mixture of other things. But those were the basic two sources that I relied on. And
In which
other
topic?
articles. What's that?
In which topic?
Well, it was on sexually explicit materials, the laws and social attitudes towards sexually explicit materials in different countries and regions of the world.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought it was mostly about your story about those who've been sexually abused by women, sexually abused by men, whatever it is, and then they basically give you who they were then and who they are now.
No, I was a lawyer. It's a book on foreign comparative law and social sciences.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought it was something like a different topic because it was written after you've experienced what you've experienced. So, how can now your role as a toxic relationship expert, what would you advise people? And we're actually about to wrap up. What do you advise people to, how to go when it comes to dating now, especially if they've gone through this very traumatic experience?
Well, what I'm telling people now, I'm telling that I'm looking for a woman, a beautiful woman, my age or younger, who is financially independent. I'm not looking to support a woman financially. In fact, I don't, and I tell them I don't really want to pay for everything, who loves me, we enjoy being together, we enjoy doing things together, and we'll come to love one another. So I think, for one thing, that women need to get off their high horse. They don't deserve all of this stuff. Maybe they could have gotten a lot of the stuff they're demanding in college when they were younger. But now, look, we just want a relationship. I don't want all these formal things. So many women are demanding,
Yes.
I want this, I want that. You need to do this. Need to have this much income, and please, please, treat a man like a human being. We're good people. We may not make as much money than you. That's equality. That's equality. Now, men need to stop paying for stuff. Stop paying for strippers. Stop paying for prostitutes. Don't give women money for that. You, and try, you want to meet somebody younger. You mentioned men meeting younger women, but ask this: younger women meet older men, right?
Yeah.
Younger women are looking for older men, and older women are also looking for younger men nowadays.
Yeah.
They don't want an old turkey neck. They want a guy who's younger than them.
Yes.
So,
Well, I mean, if you're looking for sugar mommy or sugar daddy, then that's your
yeah,
choice.
but no, they don't. They're not looking for a sugar mommy or sugar daddy. They still want the guy to pay for everything and play the male role, even though he's 10 years or 5 years younger than them. So these things, these traditional relationships in a post-feminist world, are incongruent. And so I think we need to be more flexible, and men need to be more open to relationships with women their own age, and need to stop paying women for stuff that they don't deserve to be paid for, in my opinion, and not worth it.
Well,
Find a woman who would do it to you.
That's a sound advice, Richard. And on that note, that is unfortunately the only time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and sharing your extensive knowledge in the field of toxic relationship. Now, the many recommendations you shared to our loyal listeners will help them better navigate through these choppy waters. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. I'm also very excited about the many upcoming industry experts that we have scheduled for season 7 of the Love and Dating Grow with Dr. Dan podcast, filled with very valuable tips and advice, just like the one that you listened today. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all stay safe, sane, and smart when searching for that special someone. Stay tuned for our next episode.